So first of all, thank you to all who have joined this meeting. This is our 6th webinar that we are conducting on various aspects of MSME and industry. Small nuggets of information which will help you to keep you alive and think. So till now we have had very successful 5 meetings. This is the 6th meeting, and the 6th meeting is on innovation. And I warmly welcome and introduce you to the guests of today's meeting. First is Mr.S.Devarajan. A small introduction about him. It's difficult to bring in so many details about him and so many facets about him, but nevertheless, I'll give it a try. So Mr. Devrajan is an alumnus of IIT Kharagpur, and he was the founder and is the founder of a strategic management firm called Transmation Consulting. He's in the board of several companies, including Soft Technologies, chairman of the ADC Communication, and is a nominee director of Tata Sky. He's also on the investment committee board of the government of Karnataka. So prior to this, he was the managing director and CEO of Tata Elxsi and of Cisco. Dev has been a leading light in the path of innovation. He has actually brought in a lot of aspects of innovation, which you will see as the discussion goes around. And we are very, very happy and grateful that Dev has joined this meeting. Next is Naresh. Naresh is currently the CTO or the Chief Technology Officer of Tektronics for EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East, and Africa, as well as India. So he holds a huge portfolio, and he has been in this in various companies like HP, Agilent, Keysight, and others, where he has led technology from the forefront. He is an alumnus of the University of Hyderabad and has done his computer engineering and computer sciences, and is also a Bachelor of Communications from JNTU Hyderabad. So we have 2 very illustrious people who have led the path of innovation, and it will be an interesting discussion, an interesting oversight on what innovation is, what we need to do, and how do we foster innovative culture in our companies, whether it's big or whether it is small. So with that small introduction, I would just lay the rules of the game. The rules of the game are very simple, that we will start off with Krishna Sri, who is our Dean of the university, to give a welcome speech. Thereafter, it will be followed by a discussion between Dev and Naresh, and both of them will talk and try to bring out the various aspects of innovation in the long journey in this road. This will be about a span of about 45 minutes to about an hour. Thereafter, we will open up for questions. Please kindly write the questions in the chat box. We will pick it up and ask the speakers. So your mics will be muted, and therefore the way of communication is to write down. With those ground rules, I would request Dr. Krishna Sri Achyutan, herself, and illustrious academician to talk about a few words about the series and also our Technology Enabling Center and Innovation and Amrita University. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you, Mr. Jaideep Nath. First of all, I'd like to really warmly welcome our special guests, Mr.S.Devarajan, Director of Tata Sky Ltd, Chairman of ADC Communication Limited, and former MD and CEO of Tata Elxsi and Cisco. He's a very well-known personality and industry stalwart who has made several quintessential contributions in the area of emerging technologies, management, and really contributed to the economic development of our country. We could not thank you enough, sir, for being with us. A very, very warm welcome. We're also very happy to have Mr. Naresh Kumar, CTO of Tektronics, EMEA-India Limited. He has been a constant supporter and also an expert in the country in terms of emerging technologies. With that, I'd like to just briefly mention an introduction of our university, Amrita Technology. It is a very young, multidisciplinary, multi-campus university, one of the fastest growing universities in the country. We have over 7 campuses and rapidly expanding in terms of our footprint in India and abroad with our partnerships. Very recently, we have been ranked as the 4th best university in the country with a national ranking framework coming from the Government of India. And in the international rankings, in the top 100 universities in the world as per the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings 2021. As of last week, like I was just mentioning, we were also accredited with the highest grade by Government of India in terms of our quality of education, governance, and outcomes of education with a A++ grade. The Technology Enabling Center is as a unique center of Amrita Technology, and its objective is to really create an ecosystem for technology development within the university and its ecosystem partners, which is other universities, other organizations, and really form a platform to be able to network researchers and institutes, national laboratories, the MSMEs, and the industry. So the focus of the center is to really provide an enabling ecosystem, process, and support system so that we can really nurture innovation, which is really the primary topic of discussion today. I also warmly welcome all the attendees of the program. A very special welcome to Prakash sir, who has been also a constant supporter. You could say holding hands with us in terms of really promoting the objective of really improving our innovation ecosystem and outcomes across the state. So with that, a few words, again, a very warm welcome, and over to you, Joydeep.
Thank you, Krishnasri, for that very concise and very nice welcome. I would now request Naresh to take over and Dev to discuss on the topic of today, which is innovation and fostering innovation culture. Needless to mention, I think we've already mentioned, I just wanted to point out to you, this webinar actually comes to you on a collaborative effort with Amrita University, Bangalore Chamber of Commerce, as well as the MSME directorates of Bangalore and Thrissur. So with that, over to you, Naresh. Thank you.
Thank you, Joydeep, and thank you, Dr. Krishnasri. That was nice to hear about all the achievements of Amrita University, and I mean, I really feel that you'll only reach greater heights with the efforts that you're putting in. So I'm honored to be here along with Dev today. I mean, my achievements are very minor and minuscule compared to what he's been doing. And of course, Joydeep has been very kind without expressing about his successes, but I would say that it's also good to have all of you on this call. But one pointer I wanted to make is, since we are at home and we are connecting from home, you might hear the odd sounds in the background. So pardon that, though we are trying to block them as much as possible. Okay. So with that, because it's the times of working from home forever, looks like it's been about 17 months now.
As long as those sounds are all very innovative, it's fine.
Yeah, I hope so. They're not repetitive, at least. Okay. So with that, I think it's good that we are in this mode of discussing this, because this is always a very important topic for any nation. Forget about just for us in MSMEs. It's a good, important point for any nation if they have to grow. And this is an important term which everyone should understand and sort of inculcate into what they're doing. So as is apt, I'll start with trying to see what is the definition of innovation and what are the slight nuances we can think about when we talk about innovation. Okay, so there are many ways people kind of understand innovation. In India, there's a word which is very popular in the North Indian scene, but may not be so familiar in the South. There's a word called jugaad. Okay, and there is also this term which, I mean, we were having a chat with Joydeep and he brought out, there's also this something called as disruption, right? So there are many things which keep coming in and you always think, okay, somebody did something, is this innovation? How do we define that? How do we differentiate that from the other terms that I just brought up? Okay, so I think it will be good to just start trying to put a definition to innovation. It doesn't have to be very constricted, but at least to know that this is what we talk about as we move forward in the conversation today. Okay, so with that, I'll give my 2 cents on this before I ask Dev for his interesting replies. For me, jugaad is something like we see a lot in India, but I would not define it yet. I would want to take that definition after we hear from Dev. Okay, innovation is like creating something, something which can sustain for future, something which is long term and so on. But Dev, I want to hear from you because you have led teams which have contributed to many innovations. So with that, I'll ask you to give a few ideas of yours on how do you define this.
Yeah, thanks, Naresh. Thanks, everybody, for being here this Saturday morning. So talking about innovation, disruption, in fact, Naresh, myself, and Joydeep, we did a little bit of thinking a couple of days back on, where do you draw a line between disruption and innovation? So we came out with no concrete answers. So I said, okay, let me deep dive into what some of the gurus in management like Harvard Business Review talks about. So what they say is, which I agree, though we believe disruption is complete derail from the existing to something new, it is not so. So when you say disruptive technology, disruptive method of working, it is moving from point A to point B in a different way. To give you an example, we had petrol and diesel cars, which gave way to hybrid technology. So the hybrid technology is a disruption from the standard petrol and diesel. And now we are talking about electric vehicles, the EVs. So EVs, again, are a disruption from the hybrid. So you're still going down the same path, but you're changing the way and methodology by which you're traversing that path. So that is what is called disruptive, technology, or even, it's commonly called disruptive innovation today. So, we have an example of whether it's disruptive or innovation, we can talk about it. That's, we talked about this, Naresh, about how, the whole telecommunication scenario in India has changed during the prime ministership of Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. I know many of you may not have been born then, but just to give you an idea, our Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi requested and invited Mr. Sam Petroda, who was a telecom guru in the United States, and asked him to revamp this entire communication system in our country. Earlier we used to have one phone for every 7-8 homes, and you couldn't talk beyond a local call. You had to book a call to talk to another city or country. So he brought this whole telecom revolution in our country, where he got organizations to start manufacturing small exchanges, telecom exchanges or telephone exchanges, wherein you could make the calls easier, cheaper, and much faster. So since nobody had phones because of the lack of instruments in this country, we had this yellow booth, like you see, it was called a PCO, a telephone booth from where you could actually make these international calls or calls to your family in another city in the country. But then how do you bill them? How do you ask them to pay? So the innovation there was this gadget which you see on the left on your screen, which is looks like a kind of an advanced calculator, which actually, when you dial the number, it tells you which city is being called. So what is the charge from, say, Coimbatore to Bangalore, and calculates the cost and the time that you have made the call and gives you a bill. So this is severe innovation. And believe you me, this innovation does not exist anywhere in the world, because the rest of the world did not go through this problem, except India. So
I remember those days, Dev.
You remember, Naresh? So this is an innovation which took care of a local need, a local problem, and solved it.
True. But how do you define jugaad now in the same context?
And this does not last long, because finally the phones became cheaper, cell phones dominated the scene, and everybody could talk to everybody else so easily. Coming to jugaad is a little more, what do you call, it's a handyman kind of thing that you do to kind of seize an opportunity that exists and seize a vacuum that exists in a small business or a big business and fill that vacuum. So we did that thing about the Delhi thing, Naresh, you remember?
Yeah.
On those motorcycle taxis,
right,
which I think is a classic example of jugaad.
Right.
You can put up the slide.
Let me see if I can get that picture.
There it is.
It'll come somewhere later.
No, it's there.
Okay, so what I thought was I'll probably I had it later in my screen, but I thought let me just show them now.
Yeah, and then we talk about it.
Yeah, let me just. I'm slightly off on the direction. Okay, so let's start with that.
Here it is. Okay.
Yeah,
we can talk about it.
It's good to have the picture.
Yeah, if you want, we can talk about it, Naresh. Since you have the slide on, you don't have to revisit the slide.
Yeah, maybe we should.
Yeah, so back in during the World War II days, India was saddled with the US Army and the British Army. They all occupied with their forces in India. And with them, they brought along a lot of transport vehicles, a lot of them being classic motorcycles, which all of you would love to have today. You had the Harley Davidsons, the Nortons, and the VSAs, and all these American and British motorcycles. End of World War II, they just left behind these motorcycles and went away to their respective countries. So we were saddled with tons of these bikes. And in Delhi, what they did was to look at a cheap, powerful, and easy means of transport, especially in the old Delhi parts of the city, which is very congested, where you cannot really ply cars so easily, and cars and taxis were far and few then. Right. They converted these motorbikes into a kind of an auto rickshaw, if you see the visual. And around that time, the other thing that happened was horse carriages were kind of banned from metros. They were only allowed to operate in the suburbs and outskirts of the city. So as a very good means of transportation, this contraption, like an motorcycle auto rickshaw, was devised using these bikes, and they were called fatfatis because of the sound they made. And they replaced the standard horse-drawn tongas, and they plied from central Delhi in Connaught Place to the old Delhi part, which is Karol Bagh and other areas of Delhi. So for those who you may know, and this became a huge means of transportation, very inexpensive. They used to take multiple people, not just a single person. It was like a shuttle service. And this lasted about 30 years. It's called a jugaad because you innovated and created an opportunity, and the timing was right. And it had its effective life on the streets, right?
Very good. I mean, just to see that you're saying that adapting something to make it usable for a current need could be thought of something like a jugaad. So
Right,
basically an adjustment or an improvement on something you already have,
right,
and trying to adapt it to a given need. Okay?
right.
So I think that's a fair enough definition as I see. I mean, I was seeing, I mean, this is not part of the script, but I was seeing, I go for a run in the morning and I go through some village fields, and they are doing this fertilizer spraying on the, the fields which are there. And I saw this Bajaj Chetak. For those of you know, you haven't seen the scooter, but it is very popular in the 80s and 90s. And they have the what do you call it, as a dicky that was open, and through the wheel they have actually connected to one distribution system, and they're spraying the insecticide from there. I said this is another example of Indian jugaad. Okay, and the engine is on and it's running on petrol, and they don't need another machine, right? So they're just replacing that machine with this. So there's a lot of such examples in India that we will see. So it's good that we're talking about this, because this is still something which is fun. And in a way, if we can define this in your words, as Dev you mentioned some time back, jugaad is something which is for the current need, which you want to adapt and take it forward.
Correct.
And if you say innovation, it is something which you expect it to be more creative, but it also lasts a little longer, and until something else takes over the limelight. Whereas disruption is probably innovation as well, but something which changes the way we have done the things earlier, probably to achieve the same result, but a different method of achieving that. Okay? And of course, people know the oft repeated stuff about how Apple changed the way of listening to music, right? And people were having Walkmans and all of that, and it all changed to where the moment the what were the first ones called? iPods, right? The small ones. From there, you see the revolution. But anyway, so yeah, I think it's a good discussion to define. Now, having defined that, let's move forward and see how do we see this applying, what do we talk about? How do we talk about innovation? How does it happen in organizations? What are the good examples of that? So I will let Dave go first because I will give a couple of examples later, but I just want to have maximum time for Dave to speak before I throw in a couple of nuggets. So Dave, when you see innovation and the general public use versus how do we really have this happening in the organizations? You've been part of teams which have led those in India, and probably even outside India. So how do you see that happening? What's a good example of how that happens in an organization? And from your experience, what is it that comes to your mind when you talk of innovation in the place of work that you wear?
Good question, Naresh. I mean, I have let me think about it. Yeah, I have a good example, where we talk about transmigrant innovation across the globe. This experience I had when I was in Tata Elxsi as a CEO. And we used to do a lot of system integration in India and also, globally. So there's a lot of jargon here, so I will try to make it very simple. So we used to actually, one of the businesses that Tata Elxsi was doing was in the areas of product design and animation and special effects for films. And to do this, you needed a very high-end graphic workstation, to enable this high-end graphics for animation, for 3D design and all that. Today, it is not so. This we are talking about some years ago. And these workstations were priced upwards of $40,000 US to about $150,000. Very expensive. So it kind of managed a very, very niche market, not only in India, but globally. Along with that, we actually integrated an application software, which was from this company called Alias Wavefront, which was a Canadian company. They were the #1 in the business of product design software and animation and special effects software. So we were system integrating our high-end workstation with this high-end software, and the software also was upwards of $40,000 depending on the modules that you purchased. And so a total solution was very expensive. And my intent, honestly, my intent was a country like India could not afford more than 10 or 15 of this. But I wanted 100 or 150 in India. I wanted the whole world, to use this technology to be able to design their products better, to be able to give us better movies, with better special effects than ever before. So I had a meeting with the CEO back in Toronto, and I said, hey, listen, why don't we do one thing? We'll do a program for you, and we will move the entire development of your software to Bangalore. And we will downsize this entire product on a Linux platform, on a Windows PC with very high-end graphics. NVIDIA graphics had just come into the world those days, just born. So on NVIDIA graphics, on a PC running Linux, we will redesign this whole software. So you're talking about a $1,500, $2,000 platform. And you could, of course, reduce the size, reduce the cost of the software if we are able to sell many, right? Pure economics of trade. And we did that. Within a year, we had about 50, 60 people, and we developed that entire thing on a low-end platform. And I don't know if you're aware of this product. So what happened was, once we developed the product, so we need to call it something else. You can't call it Alias Animator, Power Animator, or whatever, as it was called earlier. So a couple of us just talked to each other, talked to the company back in Canada, and said, we are going to christen it an Indian name because it was developed and born in India. So we decided to call it Maya. Maya means illusion. Maya means, something which you cannot touch and feel, but you can enjoy, visualize. So many of you know this product or heard of this product called Maya. And there are institutions around the country, around the globe, teaching, giving diplomas, Maya certification today. And, Steven Spielberg was so enamored with this product. He kind of opened the credits of his product in the first movie, which is Jurassic Park. So you can see a visual of that there on the screen. And I think the bottom right is from Toy Story. And there's one more snippet which I would like to tell you. So once we ported it on the Windows Linux platform, somebody said, hey, there's this new wave of products which is kind of becoming popular. Okay, let me tell you, give you the time frame. We are talking about 97, 98, okay? 1997, 98. There's a new wave of products which is coming, which is very good for artists, for developers, for doing Photoshop work and animation work. And this is a product called the Mac from Apple. So I told my guys, hey, let's talk to Apple and see what they do. We can put it on the Apple product also. So my program manager actually wrote an email to none other than Steve Jobs and said, we have this product. I'm sending you a small demo. See if you want it on the Mac. He was so excited. And Steve Jobs, not a big name those days, right? Apple itself was not a big name. So he called our team. Two of my top guys went there, gave him a demo, and he sent 12 or 14 Apple Macs to Bangalore and said, why don't you port your software on this also? And the rest is history, honestly. It is a fabulous product, completely, rules the roost in terms of a Make in India tag. That's what we did. Called it an Indian name and made it global. So yeah, this is
wonderful.
Yeah, some of my proudest moments in my career. One of them is this. Yeah,
actually, just to add, my son who is into animation, he's still young, but he uses this product, and I heard this name from him first. Obviously, I was not knowing about the animation tools, etc. When he said, I want this, I said, what is that? He said, this is something which everyone uses. Now, when I spoke to Dev, that's when I could link the two together and said, hey, this is a tool which my son uses. I never thought that it was something which was created in India. So that's a very good example. I think more and more companies, just from my experience, more and more companies in India who are sometimes not necessarily Indian companies, but the teams here are contributing a lot of innovations for their global products. I mean, my company is a good example of that. Tektronics has a development center here in Bangalore for 250 people working there. It's not very big by many of the other bigger company standards, but these are core development and R&D folks, and a lot of innovation which happens in our organization. They are seeded and grown here as well, and for worldwide consumption. So I'm seeing this happening in almost every company. Earlier days, we used to have a delta of a product happening in India, while the biggest part was happening outside India. Now it's the other way around. There are many companies where whole products are being thought of, built, prototyped, and actually released to manufacturing and worldwide consumption. So that's a very nice example that you've given, Dev, and happy for that. Now, let me, looking at the time, I think we still have a little bit of time to cover a couple of more topics, right? So let's look at what is it that drives people and organizations to be innovative, right? So when you look at the organizations which you have led in the past, and also driving with enabling other companies, even in your current capacity. What do you think is important or was a feature which you kind of brought into your style to create a team who thinks about innovation? Because innovation doesn't start with just, let's say, even if you are passionate, it doesn't really drive everything. A company doesn't need to have just one person thinking about innovation. It needs to have everyone kind of imbibing that if it has to be something which is in their blood and something which drives them to create new and special products. So what were the facets of your management, or how you used to interact with your team? How did you build this? What do you think an organization needs if it has to be a successfully innovative company?
It's a good question, tough question. And it has to kind of finally, when you talk about innovation in a corporation, in a company, however big or small it is, it has to slowly get built into the DNA of the organization. It's not something you say, okay, let's start innovating. It doesn't work that way. So we have to build it into the DNA, build it into the culture of the organization over time. So what happens in most companies, everybody is chasing numbers, everybody is quarterly driven, everybody wants to achieve, everybody wants to satisfy and take care of the shareholders. I think we should kind of have that as the major objective, and at the same time start what I would call an incubation center within the organization. When I say incubation center, I mean this small team, it should be a very small team of smart kids. Don't put people like me and Naresh over the hill. Put young, bright engineers, and don't give them a number target and all that for now. Give them a decent budget so that they can play around and use their gray cells to think out of the box. Start thinking differently, which would be, like we said, to start with, disruptive. Need not be something really innovative. It can be a disruptive kind of situation where, we have, say, a manufacturing center. We are doing manufacturing in a certain way. Can I optimize this? Can I improve the efficiency of my manufacture? Can I reduce my cost of manufacture, where you apply value engineering tactics? Can I change the material and make it cheaper, stronger, better, and more efficient? So let's start inculcating this in your daily mantra as the first step to innovate. Once you set the ball rolling and the team starts getting excited, then you will find ideas start blooming all over the place. But in the beginning, let's keep it simple. Don't expect the moon and sun from them. Keep it simple, and then you will find that they will grow. And you may need to shuffle the teams continuously because, there's only that much one person can do. Newton did not invent too many things, right? He just invented his 3 laws, that's all, right, in his entire thing. And he's considered a big scientist. But likewise, any of you here can only do 2 or 3 things, 1 or 2 or 3 things at any point in time. So limit the person to that. Don't expect too much, but whatever he or she does has to be very impactful to the organization, to the country, to the society at large. So
if I
and the
understand
leadership
right,
has to bless it. The
Yeah.
leadership has to bless this.
Yeah, so if I understand you right, you mean to say there has to be a method and an environment created where, or a kind of a responsibility given to say that this is also something which you have to do, not that you by chance get something.
Correct.
Right, so you're tasking them.
Yeah,
we didn't talk about this in the earlier preparation, but I thought it is an important thing to mention. There is one company which I worked for some time ago, HP. So HP has one site of HP is called as HP Labs.
Yeah.
What do the labs do? They don't really look at, do they need to create the next printer or the next workstation or the next PC? No. They work on some technology and say, okay, if there is a semiconductor technology which is known, let's create something different. Okay. And they don't think of the end product. They say, first, let's get that right. And we can find a product fit for it, or can we productize it later? Okay. That's one old example I have, but certainly it comes to my mind. But looking at my current company, right? So even in Tektronics, we also do this innovation by providing for a forum where we say that you ask the engineers at large, not limit to one group, not limit to one function, not just engineers. I mean, saying any, even an admin function can come up with an idea and say, we call that as an idea gate. We pick that ideas, pool that ideas of 100, 200, whatever ideas for a given session. And in there, we kind of filter saying which ones look interesting and say, can you talk to customers to validate whether the idea which you are throwing up is something which your end customers want it? Okay. And because there's no better way to find out whether an innovation could be useful or not than by asking the person who think can make use of it. Okay. Now, if you create a toy, the best person to ask is a child, not an adult, right? So whether this is something which they like or not. Likewise, if you create a product or if you have an idea of creating something, you always kind of find out whether it's worth the effort. Okay. So this is different from what you mentioned, right? So group which creates versus here we are talking about a group which thinks ideas and then tries out with people before they actually productize it. So that's something which we do in our company pretty well right now.
So since you talked about this, Naresh, sorry to derail.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
What occurred to me was an example of how companies have also killed innovation.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is a very interesting example which just struck me as Naresh was talking about HP Labs. Actually, a very good friend of mine who lives in California, and he, is a double computer science graduate from IIT Bombay and from Stanford University. And he was working for Apple. And when he was working for Apple, that was a time when Steve Jobs was ousted from Apple and he was doing his own thing in animation and all that when he was with Pixar. So this person, an Indian guy, he developed the first printer, which was called the Apple Laser Writer Printer, which was an Apple printer, which he developed on his own with his team, and he had the patent for it. And it was fantastic. It actually earned more revenues for Apple than their Mac products those days. This was $1 billion revenue-making product for Apple. Then Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, came back to the company. And he was doing his rounds. And Chirag, this friend of mine, he gave him a demo of the Apple Laser Writer Printer. So Steve told him, what is this? This is an Apple Laser Writer Printer, which I developed. We are not in the printer business. We are in the computing business. Then this guy was shell-shocked because this earns more revenue than all your products put together, other products put together. Doesn't matter. That's not a mission. That's not a vision. So why don't you just shelve this and shut this program down? So this guy said, Steve, why don't we sell this entire intellectual property to HP? Because they don't have this, this IP with them. So he said, no, I don't want HP to have it. Just destroy this entire IP. That's it. So they completely shelved that product, crashed that product, and that's what happened.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember you mentioned about one more thing where there was an opportunity missed, right?
Oh yeah.
So maybe that's also something which will be good to hear, because while there is a culture created, there is always, I'm not saying companies make mistakes, companies make decisions at a given point of time. Okay. And that could prove like a loss in the long term. Right?
It's an opportunity timing, marriage, which doesn't happen properly. Right. You see an opportunity, but you don't see the timing right, or you see the time, but you don't have an opportunity. So this is a very classic story, which really is making waves today. I don't know how many of you know about it. It's all about during my stint at Cisco, right? So I don't know how many of you are aware, Cisco acquired this company way back in the mid 2007 or something like that. It was a company called WebEx. WebEx was into telecommunications. So they used to do video conferencing and on platforms and all that. You guys, some of you still use WebEx, Cisco WebEx, as a teleconferencing and video conferencing tool. So this whole team moved to Cisco to continue the development of WebEx within Cisco. So the founder of
WebEx.
There was an external noise. So the founder of WebEx, this person called Eric Yuan, he made a proposal to the chairman of Cisco saying, I can create this video conferencing tool on a smartphone for you. So on small handhelds. So do you think we should pursue this idea? So it was not Cisco's game plan to enter into the home market, as they say, with smartphones or iPads or whatever. So I said, I don't think we are in that game. Let's continue to be in the WebEx development on the laptop and desktop platforms. So this guy got disillusioned, and within 3 years, he took a team out from Cisco and went public and created his own conferencing tool.
Maybe it's good to ask the people if they know what that
anybody take a guess what this is?
Take a guess on what that company or what that organization was.
Outcome of that exit from Cisco, what did it create? Any of you know?
Maybe you can just drop your your thought on the chat. What would that company you think? What was that company?
So the last opportunity, opportunity for Cisco, and a huge opportunity. Yes, somebody said Zoom. So Zoom it is. Zoom is it is.
Yes.
So just see how disruption, timing, opportunity, change the whole face of technology, change the whole face of people's revenues.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think having a culture, by the way, Cisco always had a culture of innovation still. Okay, it's not like to take away the credit from them. They always had the culture of innovation, but sometimes making that leap of saying that this new thing, should we take it or not, could be a game changer. Some people grab it and that becomes a game changer. Some people don't grab it, then probably it will be either lost or becomes an opportunity for somebody else to take it. Right?
Mistakes are always made, right? Mistakes are always made once in a way.
Timing is everything, I guess.
So when I started Cisco in India, we within 5 years, to be honest with you guys, we had more than 200 patents filed from India. So when you say 200 patents, that means 200 different innovative things that were done out of India in about 4 or 5 years of Cisco starting in India. So amazing, it's all about the culture, the DNA, and how the organization encourages this with each employee.
Yeah. I think it brings me to one question, which, I mean, looking at the time, I'm just looking at a couple of topics more, which we can probably cover. One of the things which I understand is that it's just that not you, when you said about the team who would need to be having that um, task of innovation. You mentioned about having young folks. I would probably question whether you are over the hill already, but not true. It's not actually about age. It's about a mix of ages, which is important because you want to have the balance of what is definitely futuristic, but also see how can that be a good thing for the future again, right? So one of the things which we understand also is that innovation, having that team is useful, but is that enough for an organization to be continuously innovative? So we feel that an organization should have that somehow inculcated that, this is something which we will do in our daily basis. In fact, in a lot of organizations I've seen, as in our organization, we talk about Kaizen, which is a Japanese word. I guess it means
Right.
continuous improvement, right? Continuous improvement means not necessarily innovating every day, but keeping improving. But that also creates a need for each one to think, okay, when you say improvement, should I do a delta improvement or should I do a massive improvement? Is there an opportunity to do something different? So the culture is something which is important in an organization, to have the innovation culture, not just to say that we keep doing what we are doing. Can we do something better? Can we do something different? Can someone do better? So what is the important thing there? As a leader, that if you say that, no, please do this thing same way, but better, I don't want to see innovation. Do you think people will still come up with new ideas?
Yes and no, Naresh. I mean, it's a tricky question. I mean, if you tell someone, how do you do this? No, that is what we all strive for, to do better. Whatever we are doing, how we can do it better, how we can do it more efficiently, more cost effectively, and so that's something most organizations, I think, have it in their culture or should have it in their culture to strive to do better, right? But to innovate, I think you cannot force fit anybody into that,
Right.
because it's not something that can come out every quarter. Let's have 3 innovations. You can't put a target and a number around that. It happens. So as long as there's an overall boundary condition you give, okay, listen, I'm developing these this traction system, and this is the efficiency I'm getting out of this traction system. Can you kind of try and see what you could do to improve the efficiency of this by 30%? So that is like a goal, and the innovation would drive to make that goal achievable. That's the best we can do in terms of driving a goal. Yeah.
So I mean, I was just trying to, when we were talking, I was putting this, when we talked earlier rather, so there should be always a clear vision and direction. You mentioned about having a team, so that shows the vision that, the company really wants to do something. The leadership should support that, because if you don't have the support, because there has to be money allocated. If you don't have money allocated, people will only tinker with things, rather they will not be able to come up with any innovation.
Correct.
Of course, the important thing, this term actually came from Joydeep. I'm still using that, fire in the belly. The intent of the individual to excel actually in what they are doing, or even show that they can do something even better. So the fire in the belly, which is very important. I guess if you're just happy with your daily chores and the daily work and the task given to you, expecting to see innovation may not be that, result oriented. But if you have that in yourself, then it can be driving your whole organization to continuously innovate. And there has to be a method to drive and sustain this, because creating one or having one blip of an innovation somewhere will probably not allow a company to succeed for longer term. So there has to be a method of driving and sustaining this. So that's what I came up with. Any comments on this
I
with your
completely agree
leadership?
with you. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. There has to be a buy-in at the top level, and the people who are running the execution of innovation, of creativity, they have to have that passion. When you say fire in the belly, it is the passion that drives them. It is that something which is different, which deflects you into getting that done, making that happen.
Thank you. Let me just say, let's just move to the question which this again was a question which Joydeep said it will be good to get some answers. In fact, I might even ask Krishna Sri ma'am to give an example if she is can on what does innovation mean to you, Joydeep. Then probably I will give my idea of what is innovation. What does it mean to us, and what does it mean for the small companies? How do you kind of do you have some examples you can think of on how small companies and medium companies, how they have been able to innovate and probably not stay small anymore?
So this is a question to me.
Joydeep, to you and to Dev both.
Okay. Dev can take a shot. But to my mind, I think big or small, I think the formula is same. You have to have a mindset, create a long-term vision, and allocate resources for that. So to keep it simple.
Yeah, I mean,
your shot at it.
Yeah, I've been shooting at it ever since the last 1 hour. So what does it mean to us? I mean, what is the outcome of this innovation? That's the important part. For me, if you ask me what does innovation mean to me, has it made a difference in the way we work, the way we live our life? Has it impacted us, not affected us, impacted us in any way, in a positive way? So these are some of the questions which you can ask. Has it reduced my cost of ownership of whatever you have innovated? If I'm able to ask some of these questions and get the right answers, which is music to our ears, I think we are there. We are it.
So, very, very nice answer. I mean, I was more like trying to understand if there is how do small companies look at it. Bigger
Small
companies having this group
you're
of
right.
people. Bigger people, they have a set of people who are doing specifically targeting innovation, etc. But how do small companies try and get onto the market? How do they?
So let's look at small companies. Let's look at entrepreneurs, right? Or in today's world, we call them startups, right? So there are a bunch of startups today who actually are trying to do something at the leading edge of technology. So the biggest challenge for them is, like we talked about earlier, you have the passion, you have the fire in the belly, all that is there. But then what happens? Where do you go for your monies? You need a certain element of investment to get this done. So in today's world, we have angel investors helping out. You have, first level VCs who are trying to help out. And I can just, guide you guys into, I am actually a member of the advisory board for the Karnataka state government, where we have an investment fund, and I'm an advisor there. And we scrutinize at least 3 or 4 proposals every quarter from mainly startups, from entrepreneurs, 2 or 3 interested people who have started this whole ideation, as you may call it, and they want to do something. So we actually give seed capital to these organizations, but limited to them developing a product or a technology, not for e-commerce or software applications, because there's plenty of organizations funding those guys, Right. But when you want to look at a good product, hardware product, or a technology, or even a software product is okay, we kind of scrutinize those proposals and fund them. So there are opportunities, avenues, which are otherwise constraining factors to, I would say, enhance innovation amongst smaller companies, individuals, groups of people.
I think that's a good one. I remember Joydeep mentioning that, there is a company which makes this smart canes, okay, which is primarily for helping out the blind. And this was also an innovation from a small company, I believe in Chennai. So there are many, I mean, this is one example, but there are many examples of people innovating and then taking that idea out to the market. So there are opportunities wise, there are n number. For me, innovation means anything which can make an end user. Always there has to be an end user for whatever you are innovating. The end user should have an opportunity to do a task easier, better, faster, whatever is important to them as a parameter after having that innovation.
Correct.
So for me, whatever helps them achieve their task in a more efficient manner is an innovation. So that's how I look at it. And I think we are at the almost at the end of the hour. So I believe it will be good to open up for questions. And also, Joydeep, are there any questions on the chat which you want to bring up?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of interesting questions, and I'll start off with a good one and very topical. So it says how blockchain technology is going to play an important role in the upcoming years, and how companies are going to use this technology in their innovation.
Naresh, your question. I'm over the hill on this.
Anyway, so let me take a shot at it without being a master. Okay, so this is more related to how you look at finance and management of finance. I think Joydeep is more apt at that. But I'm saying that the way it is going, I'll just give you an example of what it is impacting in Indian context. Okay, even the Indian government is looking at how to improve fintech. Okay, I'm just not limiting to blockchain. Okay,
right.
Saying how to improve fintech. There is an initiative from the government of India, this technology innovation hubs. One of the key topic there is fintech, and that is funded by the government to say how do institutes promote that, how can they get into research on that, and that in turn is also followed by having incubation centers for fintech companies, and they will be the ones who will lead that. I'm not an expert on the blockchain and the finance side, so that I will probably limit myself to the technology part of it rather than the implementation application part of it. So technology part of it is driving a lot of companies into investing in fintech, as they call it. Okay, so there is that's one area where I see the impact coming up. Whether the idea of using the regular money, the cryptocurrency will become important, all of that will be something which I leave for a finance person to answer, and not my cup of tea, I would say.
So there's an interesting comment. I just come to the comment.
You can name the person if you know the person who's name.
So it says that I think blockchain is a tool. It may play a great role, and there will be combinations of various tools which will play a role. Only the data management with huge data and information will be a key. So which is actually true, because what blockchain does is also creates an algorithm which actually becomes a very secure product. So fintech being a very direct area of application where money is to be secured and banking is to be secured. Blockchain has a lot of application in those areas. So that's a very interesting area.
Naresh, you may want to get out of share screen so that we can have everybody on the screen.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Just thought.
So I think another thing that I think it's a good question which has come up from Ranjan Manish is that how can we promote the idea of innovation amongst engineering students, and what should be the action plan from the management to create an ecosystem of innovation in the campus? We look forward to your support. So it's basically how can you promote the idea of innovation amongst engineering students, and how do you create an ecosystem for the same in the campus?
So shall I take this?
Yeah.
A little cynically though. Well, I'll take this question. So engineering students, all of you do your final year project, right? So when you do your final year project, what do? You have to start doing that final year project as if you're doing some kind of innovation, not try and see what a senior of you 5 years back did and tweak it and submit your final year project thesis. So be creative there, because you have the, the infrastructure in terms of labs and, space, everything is available at no cost to you, right? And there's not too much of money to be spent. It's only the question of ideation that you need to kind of invest on. And you have your senior professors who are competent to even bounce off these ideas with, and you will get your realization with them. So you start there. If 100 of you graduating, if 2 of you innovate in your final year project, you're kind of reached somewhere.
Yeah, just to add, Dev, and this is a live example, and I know of this gentleman who actually created that smart cane for the blind. So how he started off was he was in IIT Chennai, and as part of his final year project, he decided to make an incubator. An incubator in those days was not available. It was only imported. Okay? So his professor said, why don't you start off with an Indian incubator and see if we can do something? Started doing it in his garage, and he finally made the product. So when the product was launched, it was successful. And launched means he just, as a final year student, he just went and gave it to, I think, the Mother and Child Institute, and they said it was why don't you make another one? And this another one became more and more and more. And today it's a flourishing company in Chennai and exports all over the world. And it's rated as one of the best incubators in India. Indigenous incubator, but that's how it started. So that's how you start off
fabulous.
With a need.
My one comment I had.
Successful business.
Yeah, I had one comment to Ranjan's question actually. More specific to how do you inculcate that in the engineering students, right? So I think part of it is also to do with the way we grade them. Okay, so if you are expecting a project to be done in 6 months and you want them to, they are interested in their grades being great and so on, there is a set methods already there. They expect that there's a objective indicated and outcome indicated in their project plan, and then they try to just finish that. Now, if you give a little flexibility to them, because most of the younger students, what I have seen in the colleges, and irrespective of where they are, all of them are different from what they were in our times. Let me put it that way. My times is I graduated about 32 years ago, 33 years ago, right? So now the younger generation is more abreast with technology, with everything being so accessible for them. So if you give them a little wider net to say, okay, you can have your final year project, which will be rated well if there is an innovative element in there, they will start looking at it. But if they are rated purely on the mechanism of grading should also have this element of innovation included. I'm saying that's when you will probably see more of them interested in doing something different than just doing the run-of-the-mill final year project. Okay, so I mean and the other thing is about importance of basics. So as long as the basics are strong, it's very easy for the students to think about that. Okay, so it's important for people to do that, the basic building of knowledge, etc., which the students have to be inculcated in the early years. That is done, and the message is given to them that your final year project being innovative will also make it very good grading mechanism for you. I think they will go for it. Because doing a project for a company external may not necessarily bring in the innovative aspect of it. They will be boxed into doing something which they are asked to do. Just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I could also add to that. I think in at least at Amrita, we do not only depend on just the final year project to really immerse students into the culture of innovation. We actually give them experiential learning opportunities and sandwich that across their time at Amrita. So that is what really leads to, a strong intent. And then we also have these additional clubs that we have beyond the classroom timetables that we run evenings, and students stay back just to participate in many, many activities as part of those clubs, which really prepare them for, say, some kind of competitive event nationally, internationally. That participation to really dedicate themselves to win is what like triggers that passion to be able to think of something innovative all the time. So all of that goes into what they will really do, at the end of the year, 4 years as part of a project. So that kind of specialized training is required, and it's and you will not only see students who are innovative, but also I think you are able to create a sense of empathy in them, which is also equally important, so that they can actually contribute positively with the education that they are learning. So both of that go hand in hand here at Amrita, and we feel that is what is really key to making successful individuals in future.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
So I'll actually break the university questions a little bit and go a little wayward, because there is a question which has come from Suchitra, which says that are all innovations, first of all, do all innovation need to be patented? Second is aggregation like Uber and Airbnb. Is it an innovation? So what in your mind? So there are two questions. You need to patent all innovations. And second is aggregation like Uber and Airbnb also an innovation?
Dave, you want to take it, right? Yeah, I know.
Sorry? Okay. So
Dave, you take it. I know.
Okay, thanks, Naresh. So if you want to patent it, if you think of patenting it, that means it's so precious to you, and you believe that there's nobody else who's done something like this. It's really revolutionary. It's yours, and it's nobody. It has to be nobody else's, and you're sure nobody else has already done it in the past. Patent it. Why not? It doesn't cost too much, and it helps you have a patent too. If you think it is patentable, do it. While taking your second question about Uber and Airbnb, is it innovation? I think it's some kind of a disruption. Like we talked earlier in the day, you're still going from point A to point B instead of using your car or a taxi, you're doing an Uber. You're Ubering it. So it's a disruptive technology or disruptive methodology in travel or in communication to go from point A to point B. Likewise, I would put Airbnb also as a very innovative, disruptive methodology by which you're creating more room nights in every place, right?
So therefore, it is an innovation.
Aggregation by itself, but aggregation by itself is an innovation.
Yeah.
Whether Uber and Airbnb are two different innovations, I would say that they have adapted to that innovation.
Yeah, so I would stick to that definition of disruption rather than innovation. Because accommodation was always there. Transport was always there. You're changing the way you travel. You're changing the way you accommodate yourself in another city or whatever.
It's disruptive innovation. Disruptive.
Yeah.
But the next question is very...
Because it wasn't there in the past.
I'm sorry?
Sorry,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
I'm good, Jyoti. You're saying something.
Okay. No, I wanted to take you to the next question, actually, which takes me to the heart of India and the problem of India. And the question is very interesting. And it comes from Therese. The question is, dear sir, some students contacted me with new ideas and new thinking, but due to lack of lab facilities and economics, it couldn't work out. My question is, is there any possible way to initiate them to collaborate in a private academic community or private organization without any money related expectations for their input? So there is a problem of funding. Okay? There are bright ideas, but there are needy students who can't get it. Okay, and so how do we solve that problem? is there a case of private organizations who can foster these researches? It's an important question, but it's a difficult question.
Difficult question, yeah.
It's a very difficult question. I don't think so. We have ready-made answers for it, but it's a thing to think about, Dave, when you talk to various communities.
But they've had, Jaydeep, but they've mentioned, sorry, they've mentioned about the Karnataka, the funding part of it. I don't know whether they go beyond just funding, or do they take the ideas and
no, they don't. But again,
kind of evaluate them.
Naresh, what happens is very typical. Sad to say, it's a sad story, but typical of our country, where a lot of these things fall on the way. You have very bright kids, who don't get admission into good colleges for the same reasons, right? You have bright ideas which don't get incubated for the same reasons. So that's, it's a very bad, poor stigma that our country has today. Why our country? I'm sure the same applies to even economically very forward countries like the US. I'm sure a lot of ideas just get falling off on the way,
So I think
but there are certain agencies, Jaydeep, sorry. There are certain organizations which actually encourage some of these students. Maybe I can't think of them offhand, but maybe it's possible to kind of check which one or two organizations actually look at collecting such ideas. I mean, I vaguely remember one organization for sure, but can't get the name. Who were collecting the ideas and probably encouraging the students to take the ideas. It's not just movie stuff. We see this in the movies, right? So this idea comes, somebody does it, and it becomes a big thing. But in real world also there are, but not a very structured, organized way of getting that ideas across. There's only one or two such agencies who kind of encourage this. But that kind of ends my answer, because I would have loved to have given a more clear and long-term answer.
No, I mean, it's not necessary that you will have the answer. So I have actually messaged to the questioner that she can be in contact with us. If you find the name, or if you remember the name, Naresh, then if you can pass it on, that would be great to help people who are very worthy candidates. So that's one.
Jaydeep sir, I got a question. Prakash here.
Yes, Prakash.
See, 95% of our enterprises are the MSME sector. If you see the R&D spending, we are less than 1% we are using of the GDP is spent for research and development. And there is a weak link between the technology developed in the government laboratories, CSIR laboratories, even the technical or universities reaching to the MSMEs. So the technological innovation of MSMEs, particularly during this pandemic period, is very crucial for their own survival. So the panel members, can they suggest some tips or some ways where we can suggest something to the government as a policy initiative or a practical step for the technological innovation of MSMEs?
So if I take your question, sir, I mean, this is exactly like what I told you. There are the government, like I know the Karnataka government has this fund to help technological innovations. Likewise, I'm sure the government of Kerala would also have an incubation fund as part of this comes under the umbrella of the Department of IT and BT in Karnataka. And I'm sure, you have a very, very dynamic IT and BT department in Kerala too. And I'm sure there would be a fund. I'm not familiar with that, but you may want to check out on that.
So just to add, there is one from the Department of Defense as well, the DRDO. So DRDO has a program right now to reach out to more than, I don't know whether it's already rolled out, more than 1,000 startups. They call them startups which have anything meaningful for the people to kind of anything which is useful for the general public. It's like that. So they're saying if a startup can get an idea, they are willing to fund close to 1 crore of rupees for each of those 1,000 companies. Okay, but this is actually going to be somebody submitting an idea, getting selected, and so on.
Right.
There are methods and mechanisms put in place. Obviously, not everyone will benefit, but at least they will go through a process of selection and get there. And this is something which I know for sure. So I can, if between myself and Joydeep, I can probably get some details on that program.
Great, which actually brings it to my question. Of all these discussions that we have had, is that what are the inputs required to make Bangalore or Hyderabad or Gurgaon a true Silicon Valley? We say India Silicon Valley, but how do you make it a true Silicon Valley? Will you funds? How do you create the ecosystem? What do you do? What are your remedies or prescriptions for that?
We have the prescription, Joydeep. I mean, honestly,
No, he has done.
No. In the sense, we are a Silicon Valley. What's wrong with, see, only downside, I would say, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Gurgaon, or any Indian city is infrastructure. Okay? Physical infrastructure, if you take off, it has all the ingredients and it's there. Whatever you find in California is there in Bangalore. See, if you take Bangalore as the first Silicon city in India, what is the similarity between the Bay Area and Bangalore? It's very easy to say, why was Bangalore the Silicon Valley first? Take climate, very similar to the Bay Area. Take defense. They had NASA, Ames, all the a lot of defense labs in the Bay Area. We had all the defense DRDO labs in Bangalore. 3, take universities. They are the best universities in California. We had the best universities in Bangalore. So these 3 aspects, if you take, they are the 3, the tripod to create a good innovation hub or a Silicon Valley or a technology city. And the rest, people came in, and you have the largest concentration of tech companies in Bangalore, just like you have the largest concentration of tech companies in
including
what
startups.
is lacking?
But
Including
what is lacking is funding.
What is lacking? Your roads. No, funding is there, Joydeep.
Yeah,
You
in
have
the sense that
all the multinational VCs are there, the private equity guys are there, everybody is there. So that's not, a gap at all. What is lacking? Your roads, transport, all those kind of things. If you look, the physical infrastructure, which is there, lacking anywhere in India, is also lacking in this country, in the cities. Otherwise, I would say we are there, unless somebody has another point of view.
Naresh, any thoughts?
No, I think I'm with Dev on that. In fact, the number of startups we see on a yearly basis, which are coming up, is also a true indication of whether the infrastructure is there or not. I'm not even saying the physical infrastructure is a constraint right now, because most of it is with the technology improvements and all. Physical infrastructure is just one notion. But reality is that everyone is connected. There's a possibility for throwing ideas across. And so the number of startups which we see on a yearly, monthly, quarterly basis, everything is going, and the funding which we hear. So I think it's all as similar to what you see in Silicon Valley. So I don't see we are behind. What we are lacking is the academic institutions directly providing for that innovation jump for the students who graduate. And that's where I think you mentioned about, Krishna Sri ma'am mentioned about what you're doing at Amrita. Likewise, there are other institutes who are also engaging that, but that area is something which is still an area for development for us in India, per se. Okay, whether not just Bangalore. So once we have that, how do you say, bridge between the academic institutions to the next step, which is somebody who gets into a startup or idea incubation, etc. That gap is a little wider for us than it is for the Bay Area. If we bridge that gap, we are no less So that is the area where there needs to be attention. Yeah.
That's why we are part of Technology Enabling Center.
Absolutely. No, I'm saying it is the right direction, but that is also one institution doing it is still not
No,
enough,
absolutely.
right? That's the point I'm trying to make.
No, that's exactly what Department of Science and Technology is trying to do. I'll just take you because we are nearly at the end.
Half of Southern India is sitting here, 85 of us, sitting in our homes, sitting in our offices and communicating. What different, how different are we from California?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll just come to the next question. I'm running out of time. The question is from Aishwarya, and she's asking, in which field innovations are happening most? And do you see any chance of biochemistry playing a vital role in innovation? Can we utilize biosciences to create innovative ideas? First, to you.
You want to take it, Naresh?
Yeah, I'll take a quick shot at it. I think there is a tremendous opportunity for biosciences to take their innovations out into the market. I used to work for a company called Agilent Technologies. If you remember, it was I was not part of the bio side of it, but there was a big part of that company which was into anything related to life sciences, and we used to call it as analytical instrumentation and so on. So they were contributing towards cancer research, they were contributing towards agriculture. So when you said biosciences, there are tremendous areas for innovation. And it only depends on finding out how do you make something better for someone who is in need of it. Maybe for India, if you really see, agriculture is a huge area, healthcare is the second big one. Both these areas are tremendously served by biosciences, I would say. Now, you have to pick a problem which is relevant and see, can you find a small answer to that? You don't have to find the full answer. If you can find a small answer, you have your innovation option available
there. Yeah, you're right, Naresh. If you look at biosciences or biotechnology, you put it in the broad bucket of life sciences today. In the areas of medicine, we are one of the few countries in the world which developed a COVID vaccine, right? So isn't that innovation enough in that field, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's one line answer for all of you. Yeah.
So I think we've come to the end of the webinar. I think it was very thought-provoking. I wanted to thank both of you for your time, interest, and sharing your rich experiences in this area. I think it has benefited most of us and all of us. And we wish to see you again in some other innovation forum or some other webinar forum. The topic may be different, but your rich experiences will always be with us. So thank you so much, Dev and Naresh. It was a pleasure. And it was a great time talking to both of you. Thank you so much.
And
the participants being so
patience.
So they're so patient, so nice, so provocative, and at the same time, so inquisitive. So Krishna, you want to say a few words?
No, I just want to thank you again for such a interesting conversation, lots of history that was actually covered here, and I'm so actually happy to know several facts that I did not myself know. So wonderful to hear that from all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Prakash sir, also for joining. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you again. Thank you for hosting us, Joydeep and Krishna Sri. And thanks, Naresh, for being my partner in crime in this discussion.
Thank you.
No, I hope it was useful, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Joydeep and Amrita.
Bye.